Hi, I'm Marc, this is Wild Duo and I will now explain you Boolean bubbles. So let's have a look at the rules of Boolean bubbles, one of my favorite games of the collection. When you start the game, you place the ocean board in the middle of the table between the two players, and you take out all the tiles from the humpback whale bag and place them like this on the board. So that's the start setup. So in the game, it's all about that you are a pack of humpback whales and you want to hunt down your school of fish. So the black player wants to hunt down this school of fish and the blue player this school of fish. So what's the goal of the game? The goal of the game is to get your school of fish here on the central field of the board. Same for the blue player. So how is the game played? So in the game you take turns, and when it's your turn you move one of your tiles. So either your school of fish or the humpback whales. So how can the tiles move? They can move vertically, they can move horizontally if they are not blocked, of course, and they can move diagonally. And but there is one very important rule to the movement, and that is if you move a tile, it has to glide through until it bounces into another tile of the opponent or of yourself, or into the edge of the board. So for example, for this piece, that means if I want to move this one vertically, it has to move until it bounces here in this other tile. If I would move it diagonally, then I would move it until here, until it bounces in this tile. Same for all the other pieces. For example, this one, if I would move it diagonally, it moves until here, because now it bounces into the edge. Or same here, moves again into the edge. And so over the turn of the game, the board develops, of course, and your goal is to get your school of fish here in the center. And for doing this, you of course have to manage to somehow get one of the humpback whales, for example, in a position like this, so that you in your next turn can move your fish into here on the central field of the board. And once you have done this, you win the game. There are 3 special rules that I want to mention shortly. The first is blue always starts the game, and it's important that there is one forbidden starting move, and that's this one. So this move, to move the blue school of fish vertically in front of the black school of fish in the very first turn, that's not allowed. All the other moves are allowed, and when it's black's turn, this move would of course be allowed. But it's just that you, as a starting player, you are not allowed to do that. The second special rule is no other piece than the school of fish are allowed to hold here, to stand here in the end of a turn. So for example, if I would have something like this, so black would have moved the pieces over the turn of the game like this, this move wouldn't be allowed. So it's never allowed that a humpback whale stands or stays on the central field. That's only allowed for the school of fish. And the last rule is there is a second way of winning the game, and it's a rare one, but sometimes it can happen. If you manage to block the school of fish of the opponent completely, so that the opponent is not able to perform a turn with their school of fish, then you also win the game. But yeah, normally the game is decided by someone moving their school of fish here in the center, and then the game is over. And that's Boolean bubbles. Hi, I'm Marc, this is Wild Duo, and I will now explain you Tusk Tactics. So let's have a look at the rules of Tusk Tactics. What you see here is the general setup of the Savannah board. There is also an alternative mode, which we have a look at later in this video. So for this, you need all the yellow and orange elephants, but the neutral, the brown ones, they stay in the yellow bag. So once you have set up the board, you can start with the game. So what is the game about? It's about herds of elephant that meet each other here in the savannah, and they split up the herds and they rejoin again. And in the end of this family gathering, you want to be the family of elephants that rules the most of these small groups that have formed. And how do you play the game? The game is played in turns. So it's so if it would be my turn first, then what can I do? I can do exactly one thing. I can move one of my elephants. There are 5 rules when it comes to movement of elephants. So the first one is that you can only move elephant of your color or a stack that has an elephant of your color at the top. So I can never move a yellow elephant or a stack that has a yellow elephant on top. So the second rule is you can only move in a straight line. So this elephant, for example, could move here along the line, or here, or here. It's allowed or even required that you place your elephant on another tile. So for example, if I would do this, this is a legal move. So the second rule is I have to always go in a straight direction. Now, for example, yellow would do this turn. So now the third rule comes into play, because when I move a stack of 2 elephants, it now has to still move in one line, right? But it's also required to move the number of elephants that are in these herds. So here we have 2 elephants, so I have to move two spaces. So I could move here, for example, or I could move here. So always the height, or like the group size, is decisive how far you have to move. So for example, I could now do this one. And now that's the 4th rule. When you move, you can jump over other elephants. So this is no problem if I move here. And the last rule, and that's also very important. So let's say we would move a bit our pieces. So now it's yellow again, then it's my turn again. And now what is very important is that I can only, that if I move something, then it has to land on another tile or stack. So for example, this one is 3 pieces high, so this herd of elephants. So if I want to move it, here I would no longer be an option. So I cannot move it here because there is an empty space and I cannot land on an empty space. I also can't move it here because here it's too short, because I have to move the full length, right? 3 pieces in this case. I would go over the edge. This is also not possible. This is not possible. This would be not possible. This is not possible. The only possibility, so the only possible move for this one would be this one. I, of course, don't have to move it, right? I can also leave it like this. But I mean, over the time, maybe I want to move it, and this would be the only legal move. Also important, over the time, and when an elephant, a stack, a herd of elephants get maybe too big, for example, in this case, it's 6 high, it can no longer move. So it becomes immobile. It can no longer move because the way it would need to move is too far. It will always go over the edge, and that's not possible, so it has to stay here. And now, over the course of the game, we would now move our elephants, and the game will be over once all legal actions have been performed. So we have to perform all legal actions, and once we can no longer move our elephants, the game is over. And I even have to perform the actions that are not optimal for me, that maybe even bring an advantage to the other player. So I have to move all the elephants, and once all legal actions are gone, maybe it would look then something like this. So there is a lot going on. So you have these really high groups here, right? So now there is no legal movement anymore. Yeah, here would be one here, but now there is no legal movement anymore. And then the game is over. And now we get to the victory points. So for what do you get victory points? You get victory points for each group of animals that you rule that have 4 or more elephants in it. And each of these herds, these groups with 4 and more elephant, gives you 1 point. So here this would be 1 point for yellow. This would be 1 point for yellow as well. Here we have orange with each victory point. These are no victory points because this is only 3 and this is 3 as well. So in this case we would have a tie, and if it's a tie, then the largest herd, the largest group wins. And this would be this one in this case. So orange would be the winner of this game. And now let's have a short look at the second mode of task tactics that is on the back. This one here. It's there is only one tiny difference, and these are the neutral tiles. So the neutral tiles work like this, that both players can move them. So when you perform an action, you can either perform one with your own tiles or with a neutral one. Otherwise, they work completely the same. So if I would have here a stack with 2, this stack still has to move 2. So that's the only difference. Of course, also the setup is different. And in this particular mode, it's about that you have the biggest herd. So the one in the end that has the tallest tower wins the game. If there is a tie with the tallest tower or the largest herd, then you have a look at the second largest and so on. And yeah, that's task tactics, both modes. Have a lot of fun with them.
I'm Marc, this is Wild Duo, and I will now explain you sealed shores.
So let's have a look at the rules of sealed shores. So in sealed shores, you take out the island board and place it in front of you. Besides this, you take out all the sea lions tiles from the red bag and place them on the board like this. So this is the start setup. So it's brown versus sand colored. So in the game, you are a group of sea lions and you compete for the territory here on the island. And how is the game now played? So you and your opponents, you take turns. Always when it's your turn, you move one of your sea lions. How do you move them? So your sea lions can move as far as you want or as they can. So they can move all along these lines. And for example, you could move this one until here, or until here, or also until here. What is very important is you can't jump over another sea lion, and it's also not possible to land on another sea lion. And what is also important, and because you see these lines go over the board here, so for example, if I would want to move this sea lion here, I could move it all the way from here, then over the board, and here again, until here, for example, or here. So this is all possible. So just the movement always has to follow the lines. And how do you win sealed shores? You win sealed shores if you manage to encircle one of your opponent's pieces. So for example, if I would manage to do over the turn of the game something like this, now this sea lion is encircled. It cannot perform a move in your opponent's turn. It's blocked, and once this is the case, the game is immediately over and you win the game. And that's sealed shores.
Hi, I'm Marc, this is Wild Duo, and I will now explain you mannequin mates.
So let's have a look at the rules of mannequin mates. So in mannequin mates, when you start the game, you place the rainforest board in front of you, and you take out all the bird tiles from the green bag. And then one of the players takes 6 white birds and one takes 6 purple birds. It's very important that the birds, they have like both colors. But in the beginning, you start like this. So one player plays purple, one plays white. So what is the game about? So in the game, it's all about these male mannequin birds, and you try to find a good group, because these birds always perform a very complicated mating dance, and so you try to find like a synchronized group that works together very well. And in the game, this means, so how do you win the game? If you manage to have 4 in a row, you win the game. It's very important that if you have 5 in a row, you automatically lose the game. So it's never allowed to have 5 in a row. Even if you have 4 in a row and 5 in a row at the same time, you lose the game, because 5 in a row always loses the game. It's also important that these 4 in a row, they can also be horizontally, or they can also be diagonally, like this. So how does the game start? So it's always the case that purple starts, because purple has a slight disadvantage on the board. But this I will explain in a second, but purple always has to start. So how do you play? You take turns, and once it's your turn, you can perform one of two actions. The first action you can do is you can place one of your birds. The second possibility would be to move one of your birds that you have already placed on the board. So how does placement work? So placing works like this, that I can place one of my birds that I have here in stock on one of the empty fields here on the board. So for example like this, and then it would be white's turn, could place one of the bird. It's very important that the only rule when it comes to placement is you can't place a bird on one of the other birds. That's not possible. And it's also important that when over the time we would place our birds, you can never win the game with placing 4 in a row. So 4 in a row, you always have to achieve with a movement, right? Movement I will explain in a second, but it's just important. You can never place one of your tiles and win the game like this, because now you would have achieved 4 in a row. But it's important if you for some reason place a 5 in a row, then you can lose the game. So 5 in a row always loses. Doesn't matter how you achieve it, you directly lose. But you can never win with placing one of your tiles. So, and now how does movement works? So once I have placed some of my tiles, or at least one, I can now move it. So how do these birds move? They can always move one field, vertically, diagonally, or horizontally. Same for white. There is one exception. If purple stands on a purple tree, it can move the whole diagonal here. So it's possible to move from here to here, but also to the very end. And same with white. If white stands on the white trees, it can move all the diagonal here. So it has way more degrees of freedom. And since there are a bit more white squares than purple ones, purple has to start, because purple has a slight disadvantage on the board. The green trees, they are neutral. So this means that here all doesn't matter if you have a white bird or a purple bird, and when you move it, you can move it only in one direction. Same of course is true if the purple bird is on white, then it also can only move one field and not the whole diagonal, because only it has to be the case that purple is on purple. So movement is very important, because I already explained before, you can only win the game with a move. So if I move, for example, this bird here, then now I have 4 in a row. It's not allowed to win by a placement. So moving is very important. And moving has also another thing that can happen when you move a tile. So first I have to place some tiles here that I can explain you this a bit better, right? So let's do it like this. So this is like an advanced setup. So so the game was already played some turns, and now it would be white's turn. So white would now move then their bird here. So now then some stuff happens, because when you encircle a bird of the other color like this, so this would be in the sandwich, this purple bird would be in the sandwich of these two white ones, then it gets flipped. And that's also the reason why we have these two colored tiles, because these birds, they can be flipped, and now they are in your team, and now you can move them, right? So, and it's again very important that a flip can only happen after a movement, right? If you do that with a placing, nothing happens. But if you move it, then some stuff happens. And it's very important. For example, now we have the bird here in the sandwich. We would flip it, but there would also be something else happening. We would also, now it would be a double flip, because now, see again, if I move it like this, I have a sandwich here and I have a sandwich here. And now white would win the game because it's 4 in a row, and it was achieved by a movement or together with a flip, but it could also be only a movement. It would also have been possible just to move here. But since it's not done by a placement, white would win the game. Also important, let's now, for example, assume this piece wouldn't be here, but white would again move here, right? Then again the flip would happen, but very important, once a flip is done, there is no second flip, because this one is flipped, we would have another sandwich here, but this would not lead to another flip. That's very important. So you only have the flips that you directly achieve with the first sandwiches, but there are no following sandwiches that lead to more flips, right? That will not happen. So let's go back to the situation. Let's assume now, for example, the bird would be here, and we would have here a purple bird. One also very important thing is, if I move here with my bird, it doesn't get flipped. So flipping and winning only occurs if you do if you achieve it actively. So if I move here, or if I even place something here, nothing happens. So I can place my birds in a sandwich and nothing happens. But if the other bird moves like this, and then the sandwich, and there is a flip, then they can win the game. It's also like a last thing that I also want to mention. You can also do a double flip like this. That would also be possible. So you can flip even two birds. Again, important if you would do something like this. If you would do this and everything here would flip, then you again lose the game because it's 5 in a row. So yeah, just keep in mind, you win the game with achieving 4 in a row, and you have to do it by flipping another bird or by a movement, never by a placement, and that's mannequin birds.
Hi, I'm Marc, this is Wild Duo, and I will now explain you Monkey Monarchs.
So let's have a look at the rules of Monkey Monarchs. When you play Monkey Monarchs, you use the mountain board, which you place in front of you. The mountain board has two sides. So there is a 5-on-5 side and a 6-on-6 side. The 5-on-5 is for more experienced players and players that want to have a bit more of an aggressive, fast-paced game, while the 6-on-6 is more for beginners. So when you set up the game, you do it exactly like this. So you take all the monkey pieces from the light blue bag and place them in the corner like this. And there is a slight asymmetry between the two groups. So the blue alpha male has 2 females with kids and 3 bachelor groups, while the yellow alpha male has 2 bachelor groups and 3 females with kids. So what are you doing in this game? So in this game you represent a group of golden snub-nosed monkeys which live in the Himalayan mountain forests and compete with each other for territory, and they have a very complex interaction with each other, but also a very complex social structure, and all of this is represented in this game. So when you play the game, you do this in turns. So it's always my turn and then again the opponent's turn. And once it's my turn, I have only one option what I can do, and that's moving one of my pieces. And all of them move exactly the same. They can move horizontally, they can move vertically, or they can move diagonally. It's important they can always only move 1 square and not 2, only 1. And it's also important that they cannot move on another tile or another piece. That's not possible. So for this tile, it would only be possible to move like this or this or this. And so over the turn of the game, all our monkeys move and change their position. And then it's possible that I can defeat another monkey. And how this can happen, I will explain in a second. But first, let me remove all the pieces from the board for simplicity reasons, so that we have a clearer view on everything, like this. So in general, to defeat another piece, you have to sandwich it. So this looks something like this, for example. So this would be a defeat that can happen in the game. So these 2 pieces would sandwich the yellow female, and the yellow female would be removed. It's important to know that it doesn't need to be diagonally, but it can also be horizontally like this, the sandwich, or it can also be sandwiched horizontally. So all of this would be a defeat. It's also important that with one movement, several defeats can happen. So for example, let's assume we would have a situation like this. If now this piece would move here, both of these females would be removed. It's also important that it doesn't need to be only a sandwich of one piece, but you can also remove several pieces, for example 2 females here, or it can also be like, for example, even 3 pieces. That would also be possible. So a sandwich can also contain several pieces of the opponents. What is very important is that a defeat always has to be achieved actively with a movement, right? So if I move my piece here, there would be a defeat. But it can never be achieved passively. So if I walk with my yellow piece here between the other twos, it's not removed because it was not a sandwich that was achieved actively. It's also important that when I make a move, it's never possible that one of my pieces get removed. So in my turn, I can only remove the opponent's pieces, and in their turn, they can only remove my pieces. So it's never possible that one of my pieces is removed in my turn. And yeah, so that's the general rules about defeating. And so now let's talk about the 3 types of defeating an opponent's piece. The first one I already showed you quite a lot is this one. That is the group member sandwich. So group members of the same color and type work together. So in this case, bachelor males, blue bachelor males work together and defeat a yellow female. It can also be a yellow bachelor group or even the yellow alpha male. That doesn't matter. It's also important that it can also be 2 blue females that achieve this victory. It's just important, it has to be the same color and the same type of group members, and if they manage to sandwich another piece horizontally, diagonally or vertically, it's removed, right? So that's the first type of defeating. And the second one is the alpha male victory. This looks something like that. So if I move now my alpha male here, or could also be that I move my group member here, then I sandwich an opponent's piece with my alpha male and a group member. It can be any group member, it can also be a bachelor group, that doesn't matter. But always when my alpha male and one of my group members sandwich one or several of the opponent's pieces, all of them are removed. And that's the alpha male defeat. And then there is a last one, the third one, and that's the betrayal defeat. So the betrayal defeat looks like this. So in this case, I would move my yellow female here, and I would now sandwich this blue bachelor group with a blue female. And now the blue bachelor group would be removed because this female betrays the blue bachelor group. So, and that's only the case if they have the same type. So females betray bachelor groups, while bachelor groups can betray females, right? It's important that a female, like this, like a female never betrays another female of the same color. It only betrays bachelor groups or the alpha male, but never the same kind of female. And the same is of course with bachelor groups. Blue bachelor groups never betray blue bachelor groups. And that's the betrayal victory, right? And so how do you win the game? So you win the game, so you have 3 different options to win the game. The first one is if you defeat the opponent's alpha male. So for example, with any kind of defeat like this, now it would be gone and blue would have won the game. The second option is if you move your alpha male to the other alpha male's starting position. If you manage to do this, you automatically win the game. It's for this reason, it's also very important that the alpha male has to move at one point, because otherwise in the corner he would be perfectly protected. So as soon as there are 3 of your group members are defeated, you have to move your alpha male in the next possible turn. You have to move it away. And once it is moved away, it is not allowed to get back on this position. The only piece that is allowed to go here is the other player's alpha male. And besides this victory, or defeating the other player's alpha male, there is one more victory, and that is if your opponent only has very little pieces left, and you somehow manage to block them completely from performing any action in their turn, you also win the game. And that's how Monkey Monarchs work. Have a lot of fun with the game.